Hey friends, welcome to the Lost Eternal episode, I don't even know. So before we start the episode, I want to give you a heads up. The gameplay in the background is of an action RPG called Vikings. It's totally different to Lost Ark. Please take note that it's a different game. Mainly because I've gone through so much gameplay that, I don't want to do the same stuff anymore. Enjoy. But I also want to say that if you're watching this on your mobile phone or you're cautious about your data, there's going to be an audio version in the description below. So pause this, go into the description and click it if you want to just hear the audio version, because this is exactly what this is. Hopefully in the future I can edit some more gameplay, but we don't want to watch a Lost Ark trailer repeated for 15 minutes. Lost Ark. Here are the top features that community members want from the game. So I reached out to a few communities to find out the top 10 things that people want in Lost Ark. And I thought it would be interesting to share what they think and if it relates to you personally. A US, EU, and SEA release. So right now the game has not been announced officially to release in these regions. It is South Korean exclusive as we know right now. We're expecting a little bit more than that. Let's see how it goes. But this is the number one feature. Not really a feature, but the number one thing that people want. Number two, a Path of Exile business model. Free to play. So I want to talk about another game that came out in Korea fairly recently, maybe about a year ago, called Tree of Savior. It was supposed to be the successor of Ragnarok, and I came down on it very hard, and it's one of my most disliked videos. I really feel like that game was pay to win in terms of its business model. If you compare a game like Tree to Savior, Path of Exile, there's dramatic differences. So I really think that a Path of Exile business model is fantastic. A free-to-play game, if you want to invest in cosmetics, then go for it. Fantastic. But if you're going to invest in things like experience bonuses, movement speeds, additional slots in, let's say, an auction house, then things start to get a little bit sketchy. So number two is a Path of Exile business model, basically free to play with cosmetics. Number three, progress on the release date. So obviously we want to know more about the game. What is their schedule? What is their release date? What are their plans? What are the developers doing right now? I think what's also very important is once the game is released, what are the developers doing in the future to support the game? Usually this wouldn't be factored in a small indie game, but the budget behind this title deserves ongoing PR, public relations with the community. So what's happening? When is this game released? What are you working on right now? When it is released, so what's going to be happening in 2 months from now? Is this going to be buffed? Is this going to be nerfed? What are you guys up to? We all want to know. If we're going to be playing the game, we want to know that you guys are actually taking care of it. Number four, sailing and treasure hunting. So I talked about this in my Lost Eternal videos. If you don't know, Lost Ark features sailing and treasure hunting. So it's quite an odd feature to have in an action RPG, but not so odd in an MMO. Are these features actually going to be fully fleshed out? If you're sailing, is it just going to be a cutscene into the next map? Same goes with treasure hunting. So what I can add on top of this is that treasure hunting will be an active feature in the game, as in it's a job. You actually have to acquire it, and it will be a unique thing. Let's just hope that it's in depth, that there are secrets, and the game does support this feature. The last thing we want to do is specialize in treasure hunting just to find out that it's a 3-step process of clicking this character, clicking that character, and we now know where the next treasure is, and the loot's bad, and it's a waste of time. All right, number five, theory crafting and character customization. So personally, I feel like this is my number one. I feel like if you're going to play an action RPG, the game gets extremely boring very quickly unless you feel unique when you play it. This is quite a difficult task when it comes to action RPGs. You want to be able to choose a character and theory craft. You want to be able to go in depth and find the best build, the best customization. I think a good reflection of this has been interpreted through YouTube channels. There's a reason why some YouTube channels even exist in the first place. When Diablo 3 first came out, theory crafting was abundant. Nowadays, it's so streamlined and so easy to find out the best build even before the next season comes out. Let's hope Lost Ark has an in-depth theory crafting system. I want to know that if I'm going to play this character and dedicate 50 hours to it, that I've got the best build or something unique that's special to me, that every single other person that's playing the exact same character is not doing the exact same thing. It's fair to say that the majority are playing the most powerful character in the game, but I want to be able to create my own builds that are unique, even if they are slightly less powerful. Let's hope that we don't get pigeonholed into the one best build to play on each class at all times. Number 6, Hardcore Mode. I've got so many great memories in Diablo 3 and Diablo 2 as well. Hardcore Mode is my favorite way to play action RPGs. I've got fond memories of Diablo 3 more specifically, but also Diablo 2. Hardcore mode creates longevity. If you've experienced Diablo 2 or Diablo 3 to the fullest that you're willing to take it, creating a hardcore character reopens the game completely. The reality is this is actually a niche, and it's odd to me because this feels like the only way to play these games because they're so easy these days. Let's see how it turns out. Number 7, a non-pay-to-win business model. So this relates to number 2, referring to a Path of Exile business model. I think we can all agree a game without a pay-to-win business model is the way to go. I want to add on top of this and say that action RPGs are in the most difficult spot I've ever seen in any game ever. It is so difficult to release an action RPG game, let alone get the business model right. When you introduce another genre like MMOs, this becomes even more difficult. In fact, my personal belief is that this is going to be Lost Ark's biggest challenge. How can they handle the business model fairly? Number 8, WASD movement. So apparently a lot of you guys like WASD movements when it comes to MMOs. I want to talk about this in a little bit more depth, but I'm not going to because personally I like the point and click controls when it comes to action RPGs. But I know that WASD is highly favorable to MMOs and even some action RPGs as well. Let's look at Victor Vran, for example. Personally, I'm not a fan of WASD, but I mean, it's up here, so you guys must want it. Classless design. A lot of people want to be able to play the game and not be locked down to one class. Let's try and think of a hypothetical situation. Let's say that you want to play a healer. Well, you should be able to not worry about healing when it comes to the whole game in general and be able to do things like, say, treasure hunting and sailing, like we spoke about earlier. Are you locked into one class if you do play this game? Now we know the competitor Lineage Eternal has a very different system, so it's quite interesting that these two will be directly competing. Classless design, from a developer's point of view, means less value on the character. This is a natural cognitive bias called the IKEA effect. And I've talked about this way too many times. But basically, the more time that you spend on creating something, the disproportionate value that you have on it. So for example, if you spend 20 hours creating a class, you're going to value that much more than spending 20 hours in the game playing every class ever. I hate to break it to you, this might not be the most enjoyable class that you like playing. Most of the time, this is the character that you've committed to spending most time on and developing. And it really goes down to game psychology. So there's a lot of depth to this one that I don't really want to touch on in this video anyway. Diablo 2 hit recovery. So if you guys are unaware, Diablo 2 had a lot more features than Diablo 3 did. Diablo 3 was actually quite stripped back. We did have a specific stat called hit recovery, and it was exactly how it sounds. If you get attacked by an enemy, if you had hit recovery, you would recover quicker. Diablo 3 did not include this feature. I really think this is a cool thing for action RPGs. I don't know how it would apply to a game on this broad of a scope, but I can definitely say if they do include it, I really think that action RPGs need to be redeveloped and a lot more difficult. Games like Dark Souls, Lords of the Fallen, they don't have hit recovery, but they have the system where if you get hit, you die. So the idea of making these action RPGs more difficult is immediately welcome on my behalf. MMO mechanics, gathering, harvesting, crafting, and environmental interactability. Let's face it guys, Lost Ark is 2 games in 1. This is extremely scary for someone who sits on one side. If you're a fan of World of Warcraft, then Lost Ark might be intimidating if it's an action RPG because it's a different camera angle, a different view. The same goes with someone like myself, who's a fan of action RPGs and not so much of MMOs. I find the MMO side of things the most intimidating about this game. Not so much about if they'll pull it off or if it's going to be difficult content, just the fact that I love action RPGs, can they make me like MMOs? The idea of gathering, harvesting, crafting, and environmental interactivity seems daunting because they have to make this fun. If we get fetch quests or the doom gloom situation for myself where I'm spending 4 to 5 hours in one night harvesting crafting materials to make some item, I'll be immediately turned off. But this is the exact opposite feature that is being requested. A lot of people really want MMO mechanics, gathering, harvesting, crafting, and environmental interactivity. So I think I'm on the opposite end of the majority when it comes to this feature, but I'm hoping they can win me over with the MMO mechanics and make them interesting. Diverse endgame. Okay, this is self-explanatory. I really don't want to get into it because we've all played Diablo 3, we've all played Path of Exile. Let's have an ongoing diverse endgame. This is extremely difficult for action RPGs because this often relates to content. And when you're releasing content, you need artists, voice actors, programmers, the whole development team. In other words, you have to invest back into your game, most often not even a break-even situation, but a loss of the game, unless it is the most popular game of its genre. So for example, World of Warcraft, the #1 MMO since it's been released, in content development, they still charge a box price as well. The idea that they can release content in Lost Ark on a frequent basis, create a diverse endgame, is completely dependent on the success of the game, in my opinion. PvP. Diablo 2 had one of the most interesting PvP systems I've ever had the chance to play. But I will say on a positive note, I've seen this been pulled off in many MMOs very well. The idea that the developers of Lost Ark can combine this genre of an action RPG with the MMO PvP systems that we've seen in games like Guild Wars that I think is very, very fun to play, and other titles as well, to translate that over to the very odd systems of an action RPG will be quite difficult, but it's definitely doable. If you think back to Diablo 2, the PvP system was really a one-shot or a two-shot game. If you play an Amazon and use guided arrow, you just shoot 2 arrows and the enemy's dead. That's not a diverse and interesting PvP system in the modern gaming market. And don't get me wrong, guys, I found it extremely fun at the time. Maybe that's what it needs. But these days, people who did not experience Diablo 2 are looking for something very different. The last thing they want is to be one shot. That's a recipe for people to leave. Following through on the features already shown. As we've seen, a lot of features have been released in Lost Ark, and the beta has been following through with quite a lot of them. But when the game gets released, that's a totally different story. God bless Total Biscuit. If you guys have ever watched his content, one of the main features that he preaches is to never pre-order a game. And this is exactly what this feature represents. Following through on features already shown. So I'm going to echo Mr. Biscuit here and say that let's not pre-order Lost Ark. Let's wait for the release to come through with what they're advertising. I've been in this industry for a long time and I know how things get inflated and dramatized above expectations. Group events. This is directly related, I believe, to MMOs. I mean, the idea of being able to log on and know that on a Friday night at exactly 6 o'clock that we're going to get this massive raid and everyone's going to join in on all channels and all instances. This is going to be awesome. This is one of those features in MMOs that I love. And I really hope that they can come through with this. Group events, I'm all for it. It sounds great. I can always use more excuses to get my friends to play the same games that I'm playing. The last requested feature from the community of Lost Ark is for a gender lock class to not exist. This is one of those topics I think as a player you have to express humility. When you're developing a class or a character in the game, having two genders is the right thing to do, but also the best thing to do for player engagement. Now, we know there's male and female characters in Lost Ark, and I'm not going to be a stereotype millennial and say, oh, there's more male than female characters. At the end of the day, it really comes down to their budget and creating one class and then recreating the art for that class for every single skill. Every single item in the game is just not viable if you weigh up the ups and the downs with the budget. And I know a lot of people are going to be unhappy about this. And to be honest, I would love male and female for every single character. I also understand that these guys are a business. They have limited resources. They're real people making this game. And the idea of recreating every single item for every single class is just going to blow the budget out. So that's something that they have to consider for an MMO action RPG. This might work for an indie game where there's 1 or 2 classes, like say Vikings, sure. But for an MMO, it's extremely difficult. Is spending an extra couple of million, and that's really what it would cost, worth having a non-gender lock system. I know this is really important to a lot of people, so I'm on your side, but I also understand like responsibly what it takes to bring out a game, and this might not be on the cards. Anyway guys, there we go. Lost Ark, the most requested features. Pretty interesting. A very good perspective. Fans of MMOs have come in more strongly. Fans of action RPGs have also spoken their voices. I actually really enjoyed making this video, and let's see when this friggin' game comes out. Let's hope Lost Ark delivers on all the features you guys have talked about. See ya.